Well, thank you so much, Shari, for that very kind introduction. And as she mentioned, I am a local boy here. I was raised on the Monterey Peninsula in Pacific Grove, went to Pacific Grove High School, so go Breakers if any of you are from this area. Yes, and so it is such an honor to be here with all of you today and have this opportunity to share what Caltrans is doing. And as Sherry mentioned, it's really about partnerships, collaboration with one another, and both on the public side but on the private side, and developing good policies, good practices that really help all people, all Californians and everyone around this country. So before I get started, I do also want to thank Josh Metz, our DART Executive Director, for the invitation to be here. Thank you to him, and to all of the generous partners and sponsors here at DART. Thank you for being here and this opportunity. So as Sherry also mentioned, yes, during the pandemic, the gyms were closed, so I took up running and was having a great time doing some half marathons, and then started having a little bit of knee problems. So I had to have surgery a few weeks ago, so I'm on crutches for another probably month or so, and hopefully back to my running by springtime. That's what I'm anticipating. But it's kind of ironic. Here I am, the Director of Transportation for the Department of Transportation in California, responsible for mobility, but yet I have my own mobility challenges today. And I will have to say, I have a much fonder appreciation for mobility for all ages and abilities. And I've been noticing and documenting, not only on the state system, but on the local areas, where we have accessibility issues throughout California. So that is going to get back to the respective owners of those areas so that we can have that improved. So let me start by talking about transportation, past, present, and future. And we heard earlier this morning, I think one of the panel members earlier mentioned that in California, around the country now, we don't like highways. And I will say there have been some benefits from the highway system as it connected communities, connected cities across the country. I think the vision for the interstate system was very valiant. But the way it was laid out, the way it was implemented, has a lot to be desired in many cases. And we've realized that we've had many harms to many communities, primarily communities that are brown and black and underserved to this day. We divided neighborhoods, we divided families for these freeway systems. And so understanding that past and ensuring that we don't repeat that same past going forward is so important. And that's how we're understanding in the present and acknowledging those past harms, and in the future, why our top priority at Caltrans now is not so much on the infrastructure that we are delivering, but how the infrastructure, how the transportation network impacts people. So we are very people-focused, people-first, as I like to say at Caltrans. And everything we do keeps the end user in mind. And that end user is not only the person who's using that facility, whether it be the highway, whether it be a transit bus, commuter rail, biking, or walking. We want to ensure that they have a great customer experience, but at the same time, we have many employees who are working out there on the system, maintaining and operating it so you and I can get from our home to where we have to be. And so it means understanding that they are also an end user. But it's not just the words that we're saying. In order for culture to change, an agency must not just say the words, but we have to show the actions. And it's what we do, it's how we implement our new policies going forward that is so important, but it's also who we hire in our organization. Does our organization resemble the communities that we serve every day? Are the leadership individuals in our organization representative? Do they carry the voice of the communities we serve? So it's so important. You'll hear this theme of equity throughout my presentation today. And as we go forward, we have what we call the core four foundational principles at Caltrans. Safety is paramount for us. Safety for everyone using that system, and again, safety for our employees out there, ensuring that everyone is able to get home safely at the end of their shift. I talked a little bit about equity and the importance of our organization resembling our communities, but also our decisions, not implementing bad decisions that impact or harm communities, but good decisions that are collaborative, that engage communities, that bring people together rather than separate people. And climate action, we've heard some speakers today talk about climate change, climate action, and the work we're doing there. In transportation in California, almost 50% of all the greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector. That includes vehicles, trucks, but it also includes air mobility, it includes the ships coming into our ports, it includes the rail systems. And so, as a transportation agency, we have a moral obligation, and we have what I believe a very firm goal at Caltrans as well, to reduce that greenhouse gas emission and to reverse, if we can, some of the impacts of climate action and climate change. And then lastly, the fourth foundational principle, which I brought to the department when I was appointed, is economic prosperity, because as we're talking about moving people more efficiently through the air and through other systems, we have to also realize that transportation has a very direct impact and correlation to the way an economy either thrives or fails. And I'm so honored and pleased and proud that California is now surpassing Germany and becoming the fourth largest economy in the world. And so very excited about that. So how do we do all this? How do we implement these foundational principles? How do we deliver equitable transportation and sustainable transportation? Well, it really deals with two major plans that we have out there. And one is our Caltrans, our California Transportation Plan, 2050, which is really a long-term visionary plan that sets out long-range goals and tactics for us, addressing and dealing with states' mobility, states' accessibility, and climate goals. And it's very ambitious driven. It is not budgeted, as far as it's not budget constrained. So it really sets these aspirational goals. And our strategic plan 2024 here is our step in how do we attain the goals of that California Transportation Plan 2050. Our strategic plan lays out our vision, our mission, and our core values for the department as we move forward. And you'll see, one of our values and foundational principles is equity, and that's a very important part of anything we do in transportation moving forward. So, Caltrans has been using drones for many, many years. We began using these uncrewed aircraft systems back in the late 1990s, and it's an ability for us to bring innovation into the work that we do every day, and it's very much in alignment with the culture at DART. The technologies also enhance safety for our employees, efficiency in our work, and also allow for better collaboration with our partners across industry, across other local and government agencies, and across academia as well. And with advanced air mobility, which I'll be discussing shortly, it holds the promise of addressing our mobility needs as well as we move forward. So Caltrans has been exploring the use of drones for many, many years. We've been investigating and utilizing them for site reconnaissance during storm damage, and also landslide investigation, helping us with that. And as I mentioned, drones help keep our workers safe in these hazardous conditions. So we're also using these drones to help us now with some of our bridge inspections. As Shari mentioned, 20,000 bridges in the state system, and Caltrans is also responsible for inspecting another 20,000 bridges on the local system as well. And so 40,000 bridges to be inspected over a biannual basis. It's so important that we have innovation and tools available to us to be able to do this more efficiently going forward. In the past, our bridge inspectors had to examine bridges from the ground or from a boat if a bridge went over a waterway, or use specialized vehicles, which are called under-bridge inspection trucks, which is almost like a reverse cherry picker truck that has a basket and allows an inspector to get underneath a bridge. Drones have made the job much easier, safer, and more precise. They've reduced the need for us to actually have a lane closure on the roadway, which now reduces the exposure of our employees having to be out on that roadway next to high-speed traffic. And it's also enhanced the safety for that traveling public, whether they're on a bus, whether they're in a vehicle, carpooling, they don't have that impact of a lane closure. Drones have also provided our engineers the ability to get a bird's eye view of bridge elements that historically have been a challenge to access. And in some cases, we have to set up very elaborate systems to allow the inspector to climb up on a bridge. And so a drone can actually do this work much faster, easier, and with the high resolution of the cameras, can provide some very detailed information to the engineer. As I mentioned, improvements in the quality of the video imagery also gives inspectors a much clearer look at the condition of the bridge structural elements. And we are leveraging beyond visual line of sight operations, enhancing statewide live streaming capabilities and emergency response coordination with other state agencies. So we can actually, I can sit in Sacramento in our emergency operations center and be viewing a drone inspecting the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, the joints, the members, the welds, all of that, after an earthquake event or after some other type of event, and be able to sit there with my bridge engineers to make some decisions how we proceed forward. We're also adding with drones moving forward, and this is still a little ways out, but adding artificial intelligence so we can begin developing performance curves on our bridge elements and also develop some heat maps of specific stress zones on our bridges and other critical infrastructure. So locations where we're adapting drones to our inspections, I mentioned some of the toll bridges in the Bay Area, we're using them there, but also the historic Bixby Bridge that's just down Highway 1 near Big Sur, and all of the arch bridges along the Central Coast. So very difficult to get in there by climbing on those bridges, so drones make it much safer and allow us to have a bird's eye view. So drones have also improved access, as I mentioned, hard to reach areas, perform geotechnical surveys, and provide a much broader look at disaster zones. And this photo here on this slide, just about a year ago, we had a washout of Highway 1, again near Big Sur, and initially engineers, when they were out there on foot inspecting, their thought was we're going to have to build a viaduct structure to bridge this large, very, very large washout of the area. And the viaduct structure was going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. We used one of our drones and actually were able to use our geotechnical surveying from the drone to evaluate the entire slope, determine the stabilization of the slope, find out where the slip of the slope was, and determine that we could actually repair the roadway using our engineered fills and some very large culverts and some good hydraulic engineering in there, which saved the state literally $150 million or more by using the drone. So the drone really was a very important tool in our arsenal of tools that we have, and our engineers were able to get a much better look at the conditions without having to actually scale those slopes. We currently have 149 drones in our arsenal right now, and 220 certified engineers and drone pilots that have been deployed to over 2,000 missions. As drone technology continues to increase, safety for some of our surveying CALTRANS employees, it will improve their safety from doing manual surveying, but also, as I mentioned, on those vertical surfaces where it's very difficult to scale. Drones allow us to get more of an in-depth look at areas where there might be some issues with potential rock slides and mudslides. So this is a little video here. I hope we'll start. So the department performs emergency structure inspections during earthquakes, fires, floods, major collisions, and other incidents in accessing steep cut slopes, as I've mentioned, in structures and spill sites with hazardous materials. And accident scenes sometimes can be very difficult to get to on foot and can be very unsafe to put people in those conditions. So a drone can actually address and inspect the area from a safe distance with little or no employee exposure. And our drones integrate several remote sensing and data collection technologies, as I mentioned, including high-resolution aerial photography and terrain mapping capabilities to aid in the accurate characterization of geological hazards. They are very critical for emergency inspections, very, very critical, and including post-fire slope inspections, as well as for roadway washouts, as I mentioned here in Highway 1 near Big Sur. And with the increased impacts of global climate change, drones will become an even more critical tool in maintaining the safety of the state highway system. So now to advanced air mobility. So we can't discuss innovation in the drone space without talking about advanced air mobility. And it's happening, and CALTRANS is proud to be a partner with all of you on the forefront of this. We anticipate significant growth in this industry over the next 5 to 10 years, and technological advancements in electrification, autonomy, and vertical short takeoff and landing are really reshaping the aviation industry. These technologies are enabling new opportunities for emergency response, humanitarian missions, logistics, and passenger mobility. And along with our public and private partners in California's largest metropolitan areas, CALTRANS is moving fast and firmly to integrate AAM in our work and initiating plans and policies in support of its development. However, and I will say, however, this is a point going back to equity, successful implementation of advanced air mobility. We must promote equity and safety as we move forward together. We must be addressing the need in underserved and disadvantaged communities by lowering the cost of transportation and the delivery of goods and services. Advanced air mobility cannot simply be creating a new helicopter service for the wealthy. And advanced air mobility must be available and affordable to all Californians. We must also enhance energy efficiency as we go together in this new industry, and also ensure that advanced air mobility is part of our multimodal transportation connectivity and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And last and not least, AAM must also provide for safe, accessible, and efficient movement of people, freight, and goods. So earlier this year, in August, CALTRANS held a Future of Aviation Advanced Air Mobility Symposium, along with our partners at UC Berkeley Institute of Transportation Studies. The symposium helped advance key research and policy discussions around environmental impacts, safety, security, equity, multimodal integration, and the role of government. CALTRANS has been engaged in many critical activities associated with the coordination of infrastructure placement, flight safety, equity, and community outreach. And we're working to update the California Airport Land Use Planning Handbook to include guidance that will reflect the many issues arising from the development of advanced air mobility. The application of Caltrans' 4 foundational principles is the centerpiece as we go forward in this new industry. Caltrans has also been an active participant and sponsor of university-level research regarding vertiport placement, aircraft deployment, and travel corridor assessment. The work we're doing with our partners is very, very critical in the development of these policies around advanced air mobility. However, there still remain many questions and challenges that we're all facing together, and through symposiums like this, bringing experts together, bringing all of you together, we can learn from one another and address the questions that we're having in this emerging technology. And as with anything and everything that we do, Caltrans applies the equity lens again to all elements of our projects, including access, noise, traffic, and cost. So we're looking forward to continuing and enhancing our working relationship with all of you here at the symposium. So to move a little faster and wrap things up, I'm just going to jump right to our connected and automated vehicles. It's another area that Caltrans is working, V2X. We're doing a lot of research with universities and industry. We're looking at connected platooning trucks as well and doing research and pilot projects there. So together, I think this industry is very exciting. It's moving very quickly, but having government working with industry, working with universities and academia is going to be so important so that we can achieve the correct outcome when we're talking about policies and development going forward for advanced air mobility. So with that, I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions or turn it over to Sherry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like to sit down when
Sure.
we take a question?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much for, you have your microphone there. Excellent. Everybody can hear me? Maybe not. Yes? 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 Great. All righty. So we have a few questions that the audience have provided for us, and I thought maybe we can start with those. I have my own questions, so I get the last bit. How do current Caltrans strategic plans address advanced air mobility? You touched on that, right? Would you could expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so all of our plans that we do at Caltrans touches really multimodal transportation. And so it's so important that we are moving people safely, providing accessibility for people, and ensuring that we are providing them options and choices going forward. I look at advanced air mobility as being a part of that connected multimodal transportation strategy as we go forward together, working with all of you. It's not just walking, biking, transit, rail, cars, but it's also the advanced air mobility. And so how we incorporate, how we provide a connected system is going to be so important going forward in California.
Absolutely. And I know that you have several plans for including air mobility into your strategic plan. Is there anything specifically that you want to expand upon?
So I think with our air mobility plans going forward, it's really, we're overseeing 400 public airports right now. And I think there's a great opportunity of how do we utilize those 400 airports maybe a little bit differently in bringing equity into the equation with advanced air mobility. So I think there's a lot of opportunities working across many boundaries, many silos, if you will, on how we bring our industry partners who are developing the technology and developing these services, how we incorporate these public airports as well as connecting transit and others to these airports. So I think our plans as we're developing, they're continuing to evolve, but it takes this partnership with this group here at DART and all of you and the universities working together to bring the questions and bring the potential solutions going forward.
So we have a question here about what role will Caltrans play in Vertiport certification safety And are there similarities with helicopter certifications?
So that's a question. I know I have some Caltrans folks here that I may have to phone a friend on one of those. But I will say at this point, we'd have to get back to you unless.
Matt, would you
Matt,
want to
would
stand
you
up
like
and
to?
answer something?
Tony, it's an honor to be on the city platform with you again.
Can I give you one?
I'm Matt Freeman. I'm the Chief of Aviation Planning at Caltrans. I have the great honor of working with Mr. Tavares. We were so thrilled to see him as our new director. So I'm speaking now on behalf of our Office of Airports. So we have 2 airplanes in Caltrans and several pilots who have been certified at the commercial pilot level. Each year, every airport and every heliport in California is reviewed, and every airport and every heliport is permitted by Caltrans. These authorities are granted to us via the Public Utilities Code and the State Aeronautics Act. And when our pilots do the inspections, they look at pavement, they look at signs, they look at markings, they look at obstructions, and anything that appears to be not quite where it should be. The pilots then prepare a report, which are sent to the airport managers for them to make accommodations and, if necessary, repair any kind of issues. Does that answer the question? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Always for my boss.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the impromptu step up. So I have another question here from the audience that says, what is Caltrans' vision for statewide low-altitude airspace management to address commercial drone operations and AM?
So I'll just start out. Caltrans has primarily been known as a surface transportation agency. And so this is although we have a division of aeronautics and we do permit the various airports and we work with a lot of the airports, I think going into this new world of the, where's the question? The airspace altitude, I think it's going to involve us bringing in other agencies. And so that you have the Federal Air FAA, right, bringing them involved as well and understanding what their jurisdiction is and helping. Again, it comes down to the fact of we know this technology is here. It is moving forward. We want to do it in a manner that benefits all Californians but doesn't create unsafe conditions. And so working with DART, working with researchers and industry to determine what the right policies will be, I think that's what we have to do at this point. And
We're
so
so
FAA.
grateful to have you as a partner. As
Thank you.
we talked about earlier, there's going to be follow-up on that topic later today and tomorrow as the Central Coast Flight Information Exchange is going to be presented here.
Great.
So we will have our partnership strengthened, and we share, of course, information as always. We would never do anything without you. So is there any other questions that I haven't read? Let me make sure. Then I get to ask questions. Ooh, all right. So as you know, I'm a total transportation advocate. I've always wanted to have sustainable transportation and transit and intermodal situations. And one of the key factors for that is where do we create nodes of interaction between different transportation nodes, right? And there are all those places that we had park and rides years ago, right? We had the places where we have the transportation and transit interchange. There are places that we have at BART stations and hopefully soon the high-speed rail. And in that connectivity, Diridon Station seems to bring everyone together. And one of those places that is going to be central for the Silicon Valley and the development of all sorts of things. So where do you think we should consider for operations of vertiports that is mostly intermodal? You know, I know that airports are very eager to have that, but how do we maximize the intermodality of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, I just want to say thank you again, Sherry. We've worked together and known each other for many years. I appreciate everything you're doing in the space of transportation and with small businesses as well. Thank you so much. Great question. And I think in urbanized areas, it may be a little bit different than in rural areas, but urbanized areas, I think we have some of those nodes right now where we have the confluence of rail and transit and other modes coming together. I envision in my head is that you would have something with air mobility coming together at those same locations. It makes sense because as air mobility comes forward, if we are going to make it equitable, if we are going to make it accessible for everyone, then the cost has to be such that it is accessible for everyone. And in order to do that, you're not going to have a front door to front door service. You have to go from one mobility hub to another mobility hub, which takes you to your final destination, that last mile, that first mile. So I see that in urbanized areas. In rural areas, I see the opportunity of our regional airports that aren't being utilized to maybe their fullest capacity. And how do we start turning those into transportation nodes or hubs, where you have the air mobility landing there, and then you have some type of transit or multimodal system that branches out to the communities from those regional airports.
That's a wonderful idea. We know that BRTs and bus rapid transit is one of those solutions that we had considered for those areas along the state highways years ago when I was working with your predecessor. So that's a wonderful thing to hear at this moment. I really want to know about equity because, as you know, I'm very passionate about it, and the role of government with equity. And that's where I'm really interested in terms of what your vision is in terms of policy making, and how do we collaborate to do so?
Well, I'll tell you, at Caltrans, we're really pushing that envelope, and in many areas. With equity, we are doing a lot of listening sessions with our disadvantaged communities throughout the state. We are engaging more communities and bringing them in at the ground level before we make any preconceived decision on what a project may look like, bringing them in to help guide and drive that process with us. I think that's so important that you hear from the people who are going to be there after we're gone. Those are a few parts. On the business side, we are increasing the amount of disadvantaged business enterprises, small businesses, disabled veteran businesses that are doing work on Caltrans projects. And now as we go forward, we're going to have a combination of DBE and SBE on every project starting after January of this year. So we're increasing the numbers even further. So in my goal of economic prosperity, that foundational principle is really to ensure that with all this new federal funding, all this new state funding that's coming into the transportation sector, that we collectively make the right decisions going forward on how we use that funding, but that everyone throughout the state has an opportunity to participate if they so want to in these projects by expanding the abilities and expanding those programs for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're over time because I asked 2 questions. Thank you again.
Thank you, Sherry.